Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my full review of the Hifiman Goldenwave Serenade combination headphone amp and DAC. And this was loaned to me by Hifiman for review. Try to give you a look at this, and then I'll give you an up-close look in a few minutes. But anyway, this currently sells for $999 through Hifiman. It is a combination DAC, headphone amp, preamp, and streamer. It has 5 digital inputs. That would be USB, coax, optical, Ethernet, or Ethernet, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, and also a Wi-Fi input. But I did want to point out that this here, the unit I have, I've had this for several months, and this does not have the Wi-Fi antenna on it. And I was looking at Hifiman's website, and the newer models, or the latest models, do have a Wi-Fi antenna. So I assume that this one doesn't actually work from Wi-Fi, but it does have the Ethernet connection on the back. Anyway, this has one analog input that would be RCA single-ended on the rear of the unit. It has 5 analog outputs that would be RCA single-ended and XLR balanced on the rear, and then 3 headphone outputs, and that would be 6.3 millimeter single-ended, 4.4 millimeter balanced, and a 4-pin full-size XLR headphone output on the front of the unit. This unit uses 2 of the Hifiman Himalaya Pro R2R DAC chips, and I guess I didn't mention that yet, that this is an R2R DAC, and to be honest, I really do like R2R DACs. It's an older technology than the Delta Sigma chip DACs that most DACs are now, but R2Rs are kind of making a comeback, and I really like R2R DACs for a couple of reasons. They tend to have a warmer, richer sound, and they also, it's more like a tube sound. But the best comparison I can give you is an R2R DAC is to a Delta Sigma DAC, similar as a tube amp would be to a solid state amp. It's an older technology, it's larger, it's heavier in most cases, but I think these Himalaya DAC chips are pretty small and lightweight now. But anyway, R2R DACs also, and this is just my opinion, and I haven't heard them all, but it seems like they tend to have a little bit more depth to the soundstage than Delta Sigma DACs do. So I am actually a big fan of R2R DACs, and like I said, this does use 2 of the Himalaya Pro, and those are made by Hifiman R2R DAC chips. This has a built-in Class A headphone amp that is rated by Hifiman at 4 watts per channel into 32 ohms from the balanced headphone output, and 2.8 watts per channel into 32 ohms from the single-ended output, which would be your 6.3 millimeter. This unit is 12 inches wide by 10 inches deep, and that includes the knob sticking out on the front, and about 2.25 inches tall. Weighs in at 8.6 pounds according to Hifiman. I didn't actually weigh it, but it feels like it weighs at least that much. And this unit is very heavy for its size. It's just kind of an average size headphone amp, not huge, not small, but it's probably about twice the weight of most amps of this same or similar size. Like I said, 8.6 pounds. It's got a very substantial feel to it, and the build quality looks really good. I mean, I think I did mention that this was made by Goldenwave for Hifiman, and I think Hifiman does now own Goldenwave, but this is constructed of not one piece, but it looks like 2 pieces of aluminum for the chassis of this, and the seams and everything just look really well constructed. Like I said, it's just a very solid unit that feels very high end. I'll try to give you a closer look here. On the front, you can see you've got your 3 headphone connections, your 4-pin XLR, your 4.4 millimeter balanced, and your 6.3 millimeter single-ended. You've got your volume knob down at this end. And then if I tip it up here, you can see you've got these 3 buttons here. And trying to read it upside down, you've got your input here, which toggles through your different digital inputs or your analog input. You've got this button in the middle, which says select. And I think that's how you access your Ethernet connection. And also you can dim the brightness of the display on this in several different steps. And then you've got your output down here, which switches it from headphone amp to preamp to standalone DAC. So if it's in standalone DAC, your analog outputs on the back will be a fixed volume, and then you adjust your volume with the amp that you're running it into. Or if you put this to preamp, then your outputs on the back of this will be controlled with the volume knob. Or if you switch it to headphone amp, then it's not, I don't believe it outputs anything from the connections on the back. And when you're using this as a preamp or standalone DAC, the headphone outputs don't work on this. So you have to put it on whatever you're going to be using. Before I get into the sound of this, I wanted to mention the equipment I was using to review this. I think that's important. So I try to do that in every video. I was using CDs as my source. I used 2 different CD players as transports only, running a digital signal into this. I did not try it running an analog signal in. Anyway, running a digital signal from the CD players, I was using the SMSL PL200 CD player, and also used the Cambridge Audio 540C, once again, as a transport only. Headphones I used in reviewing this. I used several Hifiman headphones, including the Ananda Nano, the Aria Organic, the HE1000 SE, the HE6 SE version 2, and the Hifiman Sesvara. Also, several other headphones from different companies like JM Audio, ZMF, and Kennerton. And then the units are the DAC amps or DAC amp combinations, or in one case, the DAC amp stack that I compared this to were the Hifiman EF400, the Hifiman EF600, the iFi Audio Neo IDSD2, and the Topping A70 Pro D70 Pro Saber stack. Those are all in a similar, well, not similar. I wanted to compare this to the 2 less expensive Hifiman amp DAC combinations to let you know if this was a step up or not, even though the EF400 I think currently sells for $399. And the EF600, I believe, is $649, and this is $999. So this is the more expensive of the Hifiman amp DAC combinations. The iFi Audio Neo IDSD2 is currently selling at $899, about $100 less than this. And then the Topping A70 Pro D70 Pro Saber version stack, the 2 combined, I think, go for about $1,200 for the stack. So, getting into the sound of this unit, I'll tell you right now, this is the warmest and richest sounding of all the units I just mentioned a minute ago. Of everything I compared this to, this was warmer and richer than any of those. So I would describe the sound of this is definitely on the warm side of neutral and definitely on the rich side of neutral, but it doesn't give up any detail for that rich or for that warmth in the sound. It has excellent detail and clarity. This unit has a wide sound stage, and it has very good depth to the sound stage. And once again, I think that's because of the R2R DAC. They just seem to have more depth to me, where I hear things from further out in front and in different layers, where not everything's coming from the same distance, where different instruments are at different distances from me. So power wise, this unit has enough power to do a very good job with either the Hifiman HE6 SE version 2, which is one of the hardest to drive headphones made, or the Hifiman Susvara, and that is the original version, the one that is notorious for needing a lot of power. Okay, this amp is rated at 4 watts per channel. It does a very good job with those two headphones, but I'm not going to say it will take the Susvara to its absolute limits. The Hifiman Prelude, which is a $2,500 standalone amp sold by Hifiman, will take the Susvara further than this, and I actually did use this unit as a standalone DAC, supplying a analog signal to the Hifiman Prelude using the Susvara, and really enjoyed that combination. So anyway, enough power for any headphone you want to listen to. I did want to mention, though, that this unit does not have an adjustment or a switch to change the gain. So there's only one gain setting on this. And because of that, and that's one issue, small issue I do have with this amp. Okay, my way of testing amps to see how quiet the background is, and I've been doing this since I started doing reviews. A headphone that I've had for many years, long before I started doing reviews. It's the Sony, I think it's MDV 700 or something like that. It's a DJ headphone. And anyway, I mean, doesn't compete with these other headphones I've mentioned, but it's super sensitive, more efficient than most IEMs. Okay, this headphone is something like 115 decibels at 1 milliwatt. And if there is any background noise on an amp, anything whatsoever, that headphone will find it. So testing this amp, I turned on my CD player, listened for a minute with the Sony headphones, hit pause on the CD player, and turned the volume all the way down on this unit, and I did hear a slight hum. Nothing obvious, and when I was listening to music, I didn't hear the hum, but with the source turned off, and even the volume knob all the way down on this, I did hear a slight hum out of this. If I turned the volume knob, the hum didn't get any louder, but when I got to about 4 o'clock on the volume knob, which is way, way up there, I did start to hear a slight hiss. But 4 o'clock with that headphone is about 10 times louder than you would ever listen to it, because that headphone is so efficient, you're going to be listening to it at like the maybe 8 o'clock position on the volume knob. So the hiss will not be an issue with even the most sensitive headphone or IEM. But I did, like I said, with that headphone, hear a slight hum that might be audible on some of the most efficient IEMs. Okay, I tried my next most efficient headphone, which is the Grotto SR80E, which is a very efficient 32 ohm dynamic driver headphone. And with that headphone, I could not hear that hum at all. I could not, and even if I turned it all the way up, the volume to all the way to like 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, wherever it goes, I did not hear any hiss. So with 99% of headphones, you are never going to hear a hum or hiss out of this. So I would describe it as very quiet, but with that extremely efficient headphone, I did hear a slight hum, even with the volume knob on 0. Like I said, the hum didn't change even if I turned up the volume. It just stayed a very slight hum in the background. But as soon as I started listening to music, I couldn't hear it. Okay, so comparing this to some of these other units, comparing this to the EF400 from Hifiman. Okay, number one, my major complaint with the EF400 is it only had one digital input, and that was the one digital input was USB. It did not have coax or what's the other? Optical, which was kind of a major issue to me because I do most of my listening to CDs and I need one or the other, either coax or optical. Because it only had USB, I could only use it at my desk and run it off of my desktop computer with the USB cable. And I just realized something. I forgot to show you the back of this unit. So I'm going to spin this around and show you the rear. Okay. Don't know how I forgot that. I started talking about something else. So anyway, here you have your outputs, your XLR balanced and your RCA single-ended, and those can be either fixed volume as a standalone DAC or they can be adjustable volume as a preamp. Then just past those you have your analog inputs, and then here you have your digital inputs, and you have your coax, your optical, your USB, and your Ethernet or Ethernet, either whatever way. And as you will notice, this does not have the Wi-Fi antenna, but the newer units do. Like I said, I've probably had this unit about 9 months now. And then you've got your rear power switch here, and then your 120 volt AC input here. So glad I remembered that. I would when I got done with this, I'd be sitting here debating, do I need to reshoot the video? I forgot to show the back. So anyway, what was I talking about? Okay, I was comparing this to the EF400. This has more inputs and more outputs than the EF400, which is a good thing, especially the digital inputs. This is a more refined unit. It has a higher end feel to it, a higher end sound. The EF400 uses the original Himalaya DAC, not the Himalaya Pro. And to me, the Himalaya, original DAC, it has a little bit of a grain to the sound. It's a little sharper sounding, a little sharper edges to the notes, but it can sound a little grainy with some recordings, where the Himalaya Pro that the F600 and this unit uses has a smoother sound without that grain, but not quite as aggressive. It's a little bit softer sound. So comparing this to either compared to the EF400, the EF400 I think has a little bit more of an aggressive sound than this. Power-wise, I think this is about the same as the EF400 as far as handling hard-to-drive headphones like the Susvara or HE6. Comparing this to the the EF600 has pretty much the same inputs and outputs that this does. It has the same DAC. To me, they have a very similar sound. But for some reason, and I can't really explain it, this just sounds a little more refined to me. And to be honest, I'm not crazy about, in fact, I think you can see it right here, the F600 sitting here. And as you know, it's an upright unit, and I do like that style, but I've just never been crazy about the way that unit looks. And this just has a higher end look and a higher end feel to me, and it's about twice the weight. So something about this just feels and sounds a little higher end than the EF600. And I realize it's about $350 more. So, it's more of a preference. The sound there isn't a huge amount of difference in the sound that I can hear. But like I said, it feels and looks and sounds just just a little more high-end than the EF600. Comparing this to the Hi-Fi Audio Neo IDSD2. And I really like that unit. The Neo from Hi-Fi Audio has a lot more features on it. It has things like bass boost and an expansion feature that expands the sound stage. It has 4 gain settings. It has, I think, 5 or 6 different choices of digital filters. It has just a lot of features that this doesn't have. It's smaller, it's lighter. The power seems to be about the same out of the two. This and the Hi-Fi seem to both handle the Sesfara very well and do a good job with it. And the only difference I really hear, and I think it's because of the Hi-Fi has what is considered sort of a hybrid DAC in it. It's not really a Delta Sigma. It's not advertised as an R2R. It's somewhere in between. I think it combines elements of both. And I really do like the DAC in the Hi-Fi Audio, and I think the Hi-Fi Audio DAC etches out just a little more detail than this does, but this has a little bit of a softer, more laid-back sound, and I actually enjoy them both very much. I really like this and the Hi-Fi, and it came down to, in my video, my end of the year video, best amp DAC combination under $1,000. It came down at the very end to a tie. I couldn't decide if I wanted to give best DAC under $1,000 to the Hi-Fi Audio IDSD2 Neo or to the Hifiman Prelude Serenade. And the tiebreaker came with the price. The Hi-Fi is $899, $100 cheaper. So I gave the award to the Hi-Fi, not because I thought it was better, but because I couldn't decide between the two, and this was $100 more. So I just wanted to let you know, though, that this was in a tie for first place in my favorite DAC amp combination of 2024. Okay, I compared this to the Topping A70 Pro and D70 Pro Sabre version as a stack. That combination, that amp is rated as something like 12 watts per channel. It has outrageous power, and it does have a little more power than this unit, and probably took better control of the Sesfara than this. But of these units that I mentioned, the Hi-Fi had the coolest, driest, most sterile sound of the bunch. This unit has the warmest, richest. So even though the Topping stack did out-detail this unit a little bit and outpower it a little bit, this unit definitely has a warmer, richer, more pleasant sound, in my opinion. The Topping is a very sterile, very analytical sound, where this is just a sound that has more musicality to it. And to be honest, that sterile, analytical sound, at first, all that detail is kind of exciting, but it can become fatiguing. And this has a much easier to listen to sound than that stack does. And this is $200 cheaper than that stack. I did mention that I tried this as a standalone DAC, and I ran the balanced XLR outputs of this into the Hifiman Prelude, which once again is a $2,500 standalone amp, and my favorite amp that I've tried so far with the Hifiman Sesfara. And this did a very good job as a standalone DAC and had a really good sound with the Sesfara. I do want to mention, though, that I also use the iFi Audio Neo IDSD2 as a standalone DAC into the Hifiman Prelude, and it did etch out slightly more detail than this unit did as a standalone DAC, but this did have a little bit warmer, a little richer sound to it, and probably a little more depth to the sound stage. So this does make a very good standalone DAC, even along with high-end equipment like the Prelude amp and the Hifiman Sesfara headphone. So, bottom line on this amp, it's very basic. It doesn't have a lot of features. Okay, you don't have adjustable or choices of your digital filters like some of the Delta Sigma DACs do. You don't have adjustments for gain control. You don't have bass boost. You don't have a soundstage expansion. You don't have things like that. You've got one set of analog inputs. You've got two sets of analog outputs. It has what it needs. It's very basic, very simple, but I really like it. I really do like this unit. It's just, it just has to me, a high-end look, a high-end feel, and a high-end sound. It's very impressive, and without a doubt, I can recommend this. Like I said, there are a few things, a few issues I do have with it, but very minor issues and nothing that would prevent me from recommending this unit. Like I said, I mentioned the gain control, that this only has one gain setting, and because of that, I do hear a slight hum with very super sensitive headphones, only the Sony DJ headphones, but it was there, a slight hum. If this had two gain settings, it would probably eliminate that problem. And the only other issue is this does have only one analog input, and that's RCA single-ended. I would like, a set of XLR inputs, but it would have to be a little larger to make that possible. It would have to be a little taller so the XLRs could be stacked on top of each other, or a little wider, one of the two. So, but that's something I can live without, because this does have a very good DAC, and I don't feel the need to use an external DAC to power this amp. So, once again, I really like this amp. It was in a tie for my favorite headphone amp DAC combination of 2024. It only lost out to the iFi because of the $100 price difference. So, like I said, I felt bad because I had planned on naming this amp DAC of the year, and it just barely got beat out, and that was because of price by the iFi. But a very solid, very good amp DAC that I really like and can fully recommend. And that's about it. So I'm going to wrap this up. And once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. And please join us at the Headphone Experience on Facebook if you haven't already. It's currently at 37.8 thousand members, and we'd like to see you all over there. And once again, thanks for watching my video.